Welcome back, guys, to Whiskey Adventure. Today we've got a really special quest for you guys. We've got Ryan here from San Diego Distillery. How's it going, Ryan?
Doing well.
Got you in the middle of a sip.
Yeah.
So what we've got poured here is it's something from San Diego Distillery. This is 9-year bourbon, and this is a cask strength finished with African paddock?
I say it wrong, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
I said paddock, paddock.
But this is coming in at 59%. And did you say this was MGP?
It was MGP.
Okay.
It is MGP distillate.
Okay. And I don't know if you guys can see, but the color on this, it's just the most,
It's insane. It's so brilliant
most
red.
amber whiskey.
This wood,
especially considering it's not a wine finish, you know?
I have it in a cutting board at home, and it's just like the most brilliant red you've ever seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. So, why don't you introduce yourself, what your role and titles are here at the distillery?
Ryan McGuire. I'm one of the partners here at SDD. I really do it all, from the blending to the single barrel program. I probably do over 90% of our sales.
Wow.
I just started opening our speakeasies on Thursdays and Friday nights.
Okay.
Bottling, labuling, dumping.
A lot of hats.
Anything to do with the barrels.
Gotcha.
Like, I'm your guy.
That's all the fun stuff, though, right?
Yeah.
Right on. So, I guess the best way to start is the beginning of it all. What got you into whiskey?
Sure, yeah. I'm from Kentucky.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, being from Kentucky, we've got bourbon in the blood back at home.
Gotcha.
Had always heard about it. My great-granddad worked at distilleries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't know him, but heard stories from my grandma.
Okay.
She grew up in Millville, Kentucky.
Okay.
It's where Woodford Reserve now is.
Oh, okay.
The creek that's there is it's called the Glen Creek. It's like right there at Woodford. And my grandma grew up on this creek.
Okay.
Literally her whole life revolved around, like, from bathing to washing their dishes, washing their clothes, to the toys she played, which she actually found in the creek.
Gotcha.
So I always felt like it was a connection to that distillery. It was Labatt Graham back in her time.
Okay.
But her mom worked at Labatt Graham, and her dad worked at Old Crow Old Taylor.
Okay. That's what is
National
the
Distilling
Creek.
Company as well. That became the Pappy Van Winkle, where they founded it. He was there when they founded Pappy Van Winkle.
Gotcha. Nice.
And just always heard these stories about bourbon. And, you know, it's kind of in your face there in Kentucky.
Right. Yeah.
Everywhere you go, you see the different bourbon brands.
Deep into the culture.
And it's changed since then. As a kid, you know, the distilleries were there, and you heard about the bourbon tour. You know, now it's like adult Disneyland. There wasn't as much, there wasn't as much to do as there is now. Growing up, the distilleries have just blown up in the last 10, 20 years. It's a lot of capital influx and experiences and tours and stuff to do besides just take a pour of whiskey.
Right. And I mean, that's part of what makes it fun, right? Is being able to go and check out the distilleries.
And,
you know, really see all of the behind the scenes stuff, like we'll be doing after this interview here in a separate video. You guys will have to stick around for that one. But that's a pretty damn good background. So how did you get started here at San Diego?
So I moved to California about 15 years ago. Was bartending. And, you know, I knew enough about bourbon. There was a really nice whiskey bar in L.A. It was one in L.A. and one in Long Beach called Federal Bar. And I went in, noticed they had 300 so whiskeys on their back bar. It was a bourbon bar. And I was like, oh, this is where I want to work. Looking for a bartending gig. Went in, I knew enough about bourbon being from Kentucky that I could bullshit my way into a bartending gig. But I really didn't know bourbon at this point. You know, I knew it had to be corn. It was in a new barrel.
Right.
I think at this point I might even thought it had to have been from Kentucky. But just really didn't know it. But I knew enough to bullshit to get the gig. Got the bartending job. And then I was like, man, now I really need to learn it. And just force-fed myself everything bourbon.
Okay.
And a lot of that was joining Facebook groups. This is 2015. It's a lot different than they are today.
Yeah.
This is kind of the infancy of the Facebook bourbon groups.
Yeah.
But I sought them out and realized so many of my friends from Kentucky were already involved. From barrel picks to doing their own blends or running distilleries. Just really started networking, figuring out who I knew that was already in the industry.
Okay.
Led me to do my first barrel pick. Did a barrel pick. Did a stupid little sticker on it.
A little tater
Riff
sticker.
Patino from New Riff.
Okay.
And it went viral.
Nice.
Next thing I know, ESPN had it. Barstool Sports had it.
Wow.
And my $50 bottle of New Riff bourbon, people were paying $1,000 for it online.
That's crazy.
And that's what really got the wheels spinning. I was like, man, maybe I can make a career out of this. Because at the time, it was still a hobby.
Right.
Just doing a barrel pick for fun, still bartending. This is right around COVID.
Oh.
So COVID, bar shuts down,
Right.
kind of lose my gig. See people making money on this bourbon barrel pick I just did. So I'm like, maybe I should keep doing these picks. And so I just started going from distillery to distillery. Anybody that would sell me a barrel, I'd go buy a barrel, throw a sticker on it, and move it in the Facebook groups.
Did you ever run into situations where you were going for a barrel pick and you end up just not really finding something that you really were super excited about, and so you just kind of ended up passing?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is, from what we've seen from some of the picks that we've reviewed, especially a recent one. I won't name drop, but it feels like some people definitely just kind of will take whatever they're given and put their name on it. They don't really care as long as they're selling bottles.
Right, as long as they get a barrel.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to put anything my name on that I don't personally approve of.
Right.
I'm not just doing picks or doing barrels to do them.
Yeah.
I've got to really, really be confident in how that tastes to put my name on it.
Yeah, because, I mean, when it's your name, it's your reputation in the industry, and especially when you're at a distillery. Last thing you want is, this guy's not even putting out good whiskey. What's going on over here?
Right. I've been fortunate enough most of the times that we find if we have 4 or 5 barrels pulled out, and if there's something we don't like or we don't find one that we like, 9 times out of 10 they'll pull more out for you. I think Russell's Reserve, Eddie Russell, I'm pretty sure he was the only one who was like, this is what you got, boys. Like, choose one or not.
So you've mentioned bourbon a lot. I know you guys do have some single malt options. I don't know if I've seen any rye up there. What's your involvement and familiarity with those other categories of whiskey?
Sure. So most of our own distillate that we've done in-house was done before my time here.
Okay.
The distillery, we're on our 11th year.
Okay.
Me and my partners have owned it for 3 to 4 years now.
Okay.
So a lot of these barrels that we made in-house were done prior to our stay here. So Trent knows, our original founder and head distiller, he knows more about those.
Okay.
But the guy lives outside the box. He's done several ryes. I don't think we have any bottled currently, but all his ryes have always been peated ryes.
Really?
Which is kind of unique.
I've actually had a peated rye. It was from a Pennsylvania distillery called Liberty Pool.
Okay. Not familiar with that one.
So I'm already not a big East Coast rye guy,
Right.
And then adding the peat into it was like, yeah, this is really not for me.
A couple years back, I kind of forced myself to start liking peat because I was not a fan originally.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what you have to do with peat is you just kind of you got to dive headfirst into
Find one you like and kind of
Yeah.
expand from there.
Yeah, exactly.
I felt like being in the whiskey industry, it was important to to appreciate this flavor that so many people love.
Yeah.
And so I found ones that I liked and then slowly branched out. A good buddy of mine, Adam Bayer, helps run the San Diego Scotch Club.
Right.
And he's been instrumental in finding scotches
really?
that I actually like
Nice.
and kind of expanding my own horizons there.
Yeah, Vincent's a big Scotch
Yeah,
guy.
that's why I started off in this thing, Scotch. Start off with the Cohen 12 and then just branched out from there.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm slowly kind of ushering more peated stuff
Yeah,
into
I mean,
this.
I first only liked the Highland Park 12 was my only peated. Then it's Port Charlotte heavily peated. Now it's, what did you give me that? Peated,
the Balcones.
Balcones.
Yeah.
It's American Single Malt. That's going to be good.
I've done
Yeah.
a couple events with Highland Park and have loved some of the stuff they put out.
I got their I think it was the third release of their cast strength. I found it for $65.
Oh, wow.
And it's just so good.
No,
And now I'm trying to find more cast strength Scotch for good pricing, just because it's so different from American single malts too.
Right.
I just wish it was around the same cost of American single malts, but obviously you got import duties and stuff like that,
Sure.
so that's not possible.
The one that really sticks out to me as being the first Scotch that I really, really started liking was Balvenie 14 year.
Okay.
The Caribbean cask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I like to call it a bourbon drinker's Scotch.
Yeah.
Because that rum cask, it adds
Right.
the sugars. And,
Yeah,
it sweetens it up a little
That's
bit.
one of my favorites too.
It really broke me in.
Yeah.
Right
Brian
on.
Myers might say different.
What was that?
Brian Myers is more of a fan of the 12 or the 14.
Yeah, I prefer the 12 myself. over
The
14.
double oak? 12?
Yeah, 12
Yeah,
double oak.
yeah, but I also have I find I'm pretty insensitive to oak, especially being a big Texas whiskey fan.
Sure.
So yeah, but as far as, so you do the blending here as well.
I do.
What is your philosophy when you're typically going into blending a whiskey for bottling? Are you starting with an idea of this is kind of what I want to go for, and then I'm going to search for these barrels, or do you have these barrels and you're like, okay, I've got to try and figure out and make something out of this?
It kind of depends on what the purpose of the barrel is. Mm-hmm. Initially, when I first got into this, before I had the distillery, I was going for certain flavor profiles. Right. Butterscotch, dark red fruits, your cherries, your raspberries,
all the sweet stuff, basically.
A big sweet tooth. Okay, that's definitely a big part of it.
Yeah,
caramels, on that. Vanillas. Yeah. And I feel like most people like that. Yeah. But as I've taken over the distillery, doing it more for distribution, it's been less what I like, but more so trying to what the general public would like. Right. Not necessarily a bourbon connoisseur. But somebody that's gonna, maybe not like cask strength, or maybe not have experienced it yet, not used to that burn, something a little bit more tame. A lot of times when I'm doing the blends, it's not to do that neat pour. It's for something that's going to be good for a cocktail. Right. Because in distribution, that's what we're looking for. Yeah. You get your whiskey bars who want the cask strength stuff, but typically these restaurants and even shelf items for liquor stores, they want stuff that's going to be 80, 90 proof that people are going to mix. And
you're going to sell more of that than you.
That's been a huge learning curve for me. A lot of this stuff when we started out at the gate was really aimed at that connoisseur. Straight from the barrel, cask strength, as high as proof as we can get, unique flavors. And I've really had to. It's been a learning curve to trying to learn what the general public's going to want. Right. So now, it really depends on what the blend's going for. If it's something privately I'm doing for like a group, then we might stick to those unique, higher proof type stuff. But blending it up for like a general public, it's that, what's going to be palatable for everybody.
And how did you go about determining that? Did you buy a bunch of those like mixer or lower proof whiskeys and kind of try to like
taking the higher proof stuff to restaurants and getting the feedback like from these bar managers or their liquor buyers that no, this is this high proof isn't going to work for us. This isn't great for blending. It's going to get our people too drunk. We need something more like Woodford or something like that. That's what really got the wheels spinning, and it made me adjust my whole technique with that.
Are you mostly, though, just like taking that cask strength stuff and just proofing it down, or is there like a specific flavor profile that you're
there's definitely a process. I'll pull certain barrels out, and I'll be like, this barrel is so good, we're not blending. This is designated as single barrel. Right. So then I'll go to taste through usually 20 or 30 barrels, and then I mark some out that I don't want to blend, and then the ones that I mark for blending, then it's just, what is this barrel missing? This one doesn't have a finish. I don't like how this one opens up. Right. This one's too arsenic, or just whatever's wrong with it. I try to find a barrel that I believe will complement it. Right. And then just start playing around with blends. I'm in here like a scientist, 50% of this one and 25% of this one.
It's tough, especially when you're dealing with cask strength stuff too. Like I said, I do blending myself just with like bottles and stuff, and it doesn't take much to get fucked up real quickly. Right. And so I feel like that's one of the harder things about blending is just not having too much of it. No, you have to really take your time and spread it out, and there's only so many combinations that you can try before you're just kind of done for the day.
And that's what I was going to get into next was it's key to have other people to taste. Yeah. I come up with 4 or 5 different blends that I kind of like, and then I don't want to let them know at all my thoughts on them, but I'm going to have 4 or 5 people, and have some people that are whiskey connoisseurs, some people that don't know anything about whiskey, and just really get their feedback on which one they like the best, why they liked it, why they didn't like it. And you might go back to the drawing board and create something else, or if you find one that across the board, your connoisseurs and your newbies kind of like, then you kind of got a winner there.
Right. Yeah. How large are your or what size are your batches typically?
Right now we're doing about 3 to 4 barrel blends at a time.
So very small batch.
Yeah, definitely. Would like for that to grow, but
probably pretty typical for us.
Just need a little bit more demand to start blending more.
At the same time, though, it's probably a lot easier to do that than like some distilleries that are doing batches with, probably hundreds of barrels. Like I don't even know how you even go about doing that. Like, you can't taste 200 barrels would take a very long time. Right. in and of itself. But then to try and blend those all, I feel like you just got to throw it in a vat and be like, okay, what do we have after putting these 50 barrels in a vat, you know?
I feel like with something like that, we had this term in horse racing. There's a tournament where it's called pick and praise. Mm-hmm. And you pick your picks for the whole day. Mm-hmm. And then however they come in, that's what you get, but you can't change it. Like once the first race is done, you're locked into it all. Gotcha. I feel when you're blending that many barrels, it's like blend and pray that it ends. Because I don't see any way you can taste through thousands of barrels and pick out 100 to blend together. Yeah. Like
presumably they would have like a similar profile if they're in the same area of the rick house and stuff like that. But I mean, there's just so many different things that go into a whiskey. It's like, I mean, I have no idea. Maybe there's not a chance that a barrel that, you know, two barrels that are right next to each other, maybe they're going to be very similar. But in my mind, I would think that there's a total chance that they end up completely different. You know,
right.
Depending on where that wood came from.
100%. That's the one thing that amazed me about single barrels was when I learned all about that. Like, two barrels made the exact same wood, filled the exact same day, aged the whole time right next to each other. Yeah. And a lot of times they will taste similar. Right. But then, for whatever reason, they could taste completely different.
Right.
It's wild.
Yeah.
I've always felt like that has something to do with the trees, the wood itself.
Definitely.
Even wood from the same tree. Did it come from the top of the tree? Did it come from the bottom of the tree? Did it come, you know, from the branches? Did it come from the trunk? Like the wood, the tree itself being a living creature.
Yeah.
You know, it's different throughout the tree.
Yeah, 100%. So earlier you mentioned stuff about like different unique profiles and stuff like that, and that's one thing that I really love about what you guys do here at San Diego Distillery. You guys experiment a lot. I mean, you look over at the bar table. Maybe I'll shoot some B-roll later that I can throw in, but you guys have just got. I mean, one of the craziest things that I tried at your place last time we hung out was that millet whiskey.
Right.
And I wouldn't say it's something that I would buy by any means, but it was such a unique experience that it can be, you know, worth that in and of itself.
Sure.
You know?
Funny story, we just sold all 5 barrels of that.
Really?
So one thing, we traditionally, our distiller, Trent Tilden, we're running a 300-gallon still. So on ideal conditions, 10% mash, we're only getting about 30 gallons off one run, one 8-hour run. So to fill one of these big guys, these 53-gallon barrels up, we got to run it twice. 16 hours run, two full runs to fill one of these barrels. Traditionally, he's always done 10 to 30-gallon barrels because he can run it once and fill either 1 to 3 barrels off the distillate we get off. We've recently changed. We've started running it twice to fill a barrel at a time. But a lot of the stuff that we had before our time here was done in these smaller barrels. So it ages faster. The liquid is more in contact with the wood, ages quicker. You know, in Kentucky, we kind of stick our noses up at that. We want to do it traditionally. Use a regular side wood. That's what I was used to. But Trent, with his experimental stuff, so the millet bourbon, it was not just millet whiskey, it was millet bourbon.
Okay.
So I believe it's 51% corn, 49% millet. Okay. Kind of what Trent's go-to with his bourbon. He always hits that 51, exactly what it needs to be bourbon, and then he does something crazy with it. But the millet bourbon, we got a call, Field of Dreams bourbon, Field of Dreams whiskey. They're making bourbon from corn from the actual field that was used in the movie Field of Dreams. Okay. The old school baseball movie. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar.
Field of Dreams,
Not even.
It's like exactly. Old school famous. One of the most famous sports movies of all time, but it's old. It's like 80s, 90s movie. Okay.
Don't say that's all. Make me feel bad.
But it's like if they build it, they will. If you build it, they will come. Right. It was like the slogan of the movie. It's about all these. He tears down his cornfield, builds a baseball stadium, and all these Joe DiMaggio, Babe Ruth, all these famous guys that are dead start playing baseball on his field at night. Okay. It's called Field of Dreams, and so they've started making bourbon from the cornfield from Field of Dreams. Okay. And so this year they're doing something new. They're sourcing whiskey from every city that has a Major League Baseball park. Wow. And they're going to do one giant blend of 32 different distillates from 32 different distilleries and make one baseball blend.
That's going to be a large batch.
So they were the ones who bought all our millet bourbon to do in their Field of Dreams baseball park blend. So that's going to be, he said it was the craziest TTB, like to get the label approved. Oh, I'm sure. Because the distillate's coming from like 26 different states.
Right.
So that's all on this label. It's like the longest distilled by label you've ever seen.
I'm sure.
Haven't seen it yet, but That's where our millet bourbon's going.
Gotcha.
That you tried. It's going to be in a blend with 30 other whiskeys.
I would bet you if the blender plays it right, you'll be able to pick out just the hintest and the smallest hint of that millet impact.
We shall see. I hope to get a bottle of it.
That sounds like
I mean, if you guys don't at least get a bottle.
I couldn't even imagine an undertaking like that. And we're selling the guy, I think, 20 gallons. I mean, who knows if they're getting 100 gallons from there, 50 gallons from there. It's going to be an interesting bottle, though.
Yeah, I'm sure. On the topic, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, blends. On the topic of blends, one thing that I found is when you're blending something, it tastes a certain way, and then the next day it might taste different. The next week it might taste different, and another month it might taste different. And so, how do you, as a blender for a distillery, how do you go about figuring out this is where my it's totally married itself to each other, and
sure.
it's not going to change anymore, you know?
Anytime I'm dumping a barrel, I'm letting it sit 48 hours minimum.
Okay.
I always felt like as soon as you dump the barrels, it's almost like the molecules in the whiskey are charged. It's tough to explain, but it's like they have an energy to them. Like it needs to die down.
Right.
Not just let the char sink to the bottom and, really kind of, you know how to be a little bit cloudy when you first dump it from all the char and all the wood and stuff that comes out with it.
Yeah.
I've always 48 hours minimum in a steel drum. Let it sit, let it cool down, and that's not even with the marrying and blending.
Right.
It's just when I'm first dumping a barrel.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing with the blending. I want to blend it and make sure it's to that flavor profile that we hit with the smaller blend that we initially did to choose which barrels we were blending. But then let it sit until it's calmed down, because with the blending process the same thing. I feel like those molecules are charged and they're not blending properly. The whole marrying thing, 2 days minimum. It's just taste it until it gets to where you want it. And then if it's not there, then you either got to hit the drawing board, maybe rebarrel it, add another barrel to it. There's ways, if it doesn't hit that exactly where you want it, you can still mess with it. But I'm not going to do it until it gets to where I want it to be. I'm not going to bottle it until it gets to where I want it to be.
Yeah. And then especially, I feel like it's a lot more common for bourbon than it is any other type of whiskey. Just the flavor profile changing in the bottle over time after it's been opened too is another interesting thing. That how do you even is there even a way to,
there's really no way for us to control that on our end. When they open it, how long they let it oxidize, how they leave the cork off, whatever they do. That's kind of in their hands at that point.
Yeah, definitely. You got any questions, Vincent?
No, I think most of the answers
Vincent,
on there.
over.
You're just handling it all with all the blending questions and all that stuff. But I'll be more going to say about the history of San Diego Distillery. Can you give me some background on that? When it started?
So Trent Tilton, he's our founder, still our head distiller. Dude's just he's electric. He's a nurse at the hospital, but he rocks a pink mohawk. He's in a heavy metal band. Guy's super eccentric, really, really smart. He was a home brewer before he was a distiller.
Okay.
And he was like, I don't want to just... He thought about doing a brewery. A lot of his friends own breweries. He was like, no, I'm going to take it one step. I want to open a distillery. I don't think he had ever distilled before he opened the distillery.
Right.
He went all out.
That's risky business.
But he definitely took it from a brewer's kind of mold.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like that's where a lot of the great distilleries right now in the U.S. are really shining, is with a brewer's background, like Westward and I believe Balcones as well.
Well, as you know, that's the first step of distilling, is creating a beer.
Right.
We literally call it a distiller's beer, that fermented mash. Same ingredients minus the hop and some of the flavoring stuff beer might use, but it's just water, yeast, sugar, and grain, and using that sugar and yeast to create alcohol, and that's the same steps, a little bit more polished, a little bit more refined when you're making a finished beer. We're doing the exact same thing on the first step of creating whiskey.
Okay.
So if you get that brewing process down, it just gives you a head start on the whole distillation process. Yeah. You got to come up with a good ferment, know what you're doing, how to make the alcohol, the grains you want to use, impart the flavors you want to use. So the brewers, I feel like it definitely gives them a head step in learning how to distill. Trent takes another step further with the beer, and we distill from beer. That's one of the experimental things we do. Instead of doing a fermented mash, we'll just take a finished beer, throw it in the still, take the alcohol off of the beer, and throw it in oak, just like we would a whiskey or bourbon or whatever. And then even so, our bourbon, the bourbon we just bottled of his was a 7-year bourbon, 51% corn, but it was 49% Vienna malt. That's the other grain in it.
Okay.
And that is literally used for Vienna lager. Okay. So it's a malt that is literally made for beer production.
Barley?
Yeah.
Okay. So 5149?
Yeah, and it's
Vienna I definitely am interested in trying
that. Yeah. If you had our own distillate before, I thought that was it, but if it was in a 750, it wasn't it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know. Did you have
it was so wild
that Jeremy did when we did that one pick with him? I forgot what it's called. We call it the Grandma's Candy. I think it was Sierra Madre.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Jeremy picked.
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Grandma's Candy.
Yeah. That was IPA.
Yeah.
Do you guys, especially since he has a brewer's background, do you guys play around with different yeast strains at all?
That'd be a question for him.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten too much into the distillation. I have yet to run the still myself.
Okay.
Like I said, mainly do the blending.
Right.
I want to learn it. I haven't been here when he's done any runs. I wish I knew more to tell you. I honestly don't know what strain yeast he used.
Gotcha.
I know he's used wild yeast. I know he's used yeast that he's store-bought. I know it's been multiple different times he's experimented with. But I couldn't tell you the specifics on that. He'd have to do that.
Okay.
We'll get you back out here to talk to Trent.
Yeah, that'd be fun, definitely, because we have a brewery out here. I don't know if you're familiar with them. It's called White Labs.
Okay. I've heard of it, not super familiar.
Yeah, so they're not just a brewery, but they're actually a yeast lab. And I think they're like one of, if not the premier yeast lab in the US.
Wow.
And so they've just got hundreds of different yeast strains, and they're making a bunch of different beer with these yeasts to see what the different impacts are. So if I can maybe throw some ideas around.
Yeah.
Not as far as kind of less on topic of that, but one thing I think it would probably end up being a really expensive whiskey, but something that I thought would be potentially really good is, so the way I got into whiskey was bourbon barrel aged stouts.
Nice.
And so I'm thinking, well, what if you took a bourbon barrel aged stout and then also made a whiskey out of that?
Oh, we've done it.
Oh, have you?
Oh, several.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Byzantine Vision, that was a bourbon barrel aged, it was a baklava inspired dessert stout.
Okay.
That Bottle Logic did.
Nice.
We've done several of
Bottle
Logics
really?
that we've turned into whiskey like spirits.
I'll need to familiarize myself with those.
So Trent, knowing these brewers and breweries, they give us beer.
Yeah.
Bottle Logic's probably given us 35 pallets and totes of beer since we took over.
Damn.
Every different beer you can think of. We had this one, we had 2 300-gallon totes of it. And it was a banana chocolate bourbon barrel aged stout they did. It was fire. I cannot believe they did not bottle this beer. It was pre-carbed. And I mean, it was so good.
Yeah.
Best thing I've ever tasted off the still. I mean, their loss is our game. But they said it was too green, too banana-y, and that they didn't want to bottle it. Oh my! I was like, I cannot believe. I was just sipping it. Like maybe I should bottle this beer. But we distilled it, and coming off the still, it was like 150 proof banana chocolate milkshake.
Wow.
And I mean, just fresh off the still. Best shine I've ever tasted.
Damn.
Like, hands down, not even close.
Wow.
I mean, I was ready to bottle it up. Like, when people ask me, y'all have any white lightning? Y'all have anything fresh off the still? I was like, this could be it.
Yeah.
But then we were like, well, what's going to happen if we put it in a barrel? So we threw it in a barrel. It's in a barrel now.
Yeah.
We've done several from Bottle Logic. We did their raspberry coconut stout. We did the baklava. Nice. I think that was actually a porter, but it was a barrel-aged one. They did Dark Star November. Before our time here, we've done 2 releases of that. One in a French oak barrel, one in a regular barrel.
Okay.
It's fun to play around with. Stout's nice. Not only you already have a little of that bourbon characteristic from the bourbon barrel age, if it was, but the high alcohol content. That's what we want. Because you're doing a 5% beer, you're only getting 5% of yield off of it. So you got 300 gallons in there. You're only getting 15 gallons off the still. Whereas we get a 10% beer, 12% beer, 15% beer. That just more you get off of
right.
the alcohol you take off of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So stouts are Trent likes to say stouts and sours are his favorite.
Really?
Sours because of that extra bacteria, and then stouts because of the high alcohol content.
Right.
Those are his two favorite to distill.
Nice. And then my other suggestion, maybe you guys have done this, but Daniel Whittington from the Whiskey Vault, he just did a video yesterday, and he was talking about the different kinds of grains and malting and stuff like that, and the fact that you can malt any grain, really.
Right.
And I haven't seen anyone do malted corn. I have no idea what that would taste like. I think that would probably be interesting. Maybe like some kind of like sweet. I mean, corn's already pretty sweet, but like I don't know. I thought that would be
like a creamed corn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I haven't heard anybody that I can think of that's done that either.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a lot harder to malt than barley and rye is, I would imagine.
Right.
But I feel like there's also a lot of going back to your Kentucky roots. There's a lot of tradition. And looking down the nose at certain things in whiskey, where like another thing is it's kind of starting to emerge a little bit is some high malted bourbons. Like Old Elk, they just won some awards at the World Whiskey Awards for their high malted bourbon. I think it's 35% malted barley, and it's just such a unique profile, and That's just kind of like, especially being someone who's such a big single malt fan, and just malting in general, I feel like just makes things taste really nice. And again, going back to the sweet tooth, makes everything taste really sweet. So I thought that would be an interesting experiment to do.
Definitely.
I don't know how
that's a good idea.
How the difficulty would be, but
right.
But that's
surely there's some info out there on it. I want to say it's something people.
Someone's got to have tried it.
Yeah.
There's some backyard somewhere probably.
Right. All right. Well, I think we've been going on for quite a bit, so I think we should probably wrap it up here. But
cool.
We're gonna move on to our next video here. So make sure you guys subscribe and stay tuned for that one. That's going to be what we're gonna call Drams for Drams. And or Pours for Pours. I haven't decided on the name yet, but well, that's Ryan from San Diego Distillery. I'm Matt.
I'm Vincent,
and we'll see you guys in that next video.